Hello, my name's Rusty Coones, and I have with me Dave Nichols of Easyrider fame. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing great, Rusty. How are you?
I'm great, man. I really appreciate you being here, man. I'm
It's
telling you,
my pleasure.
you're
Hi,
like a
everybody.
legend in the magazine community, all that. You're a legend, man. And the magazine, I mean, when I was 19, a long time ago, I hate to say it, but it was like 1974. And every month when that rag came out, man, I was right there to get it, and I read that thing cover to cover. And I don't do that with most ever anything. I go look through the pictures, maybe an article or
Mhm.
two that I like, but that thing was so cool, man. It was like the biker's Bible.
Yeah, I remember when it first came out, there was a little Italian market where I lived in Miami, Florida. And, you could go and buy all kind of, salami and stuff at this Italian market. But they actually had a tiny little newsstand, and there was Easy Riders. And I don't think they knew that there were girls in the magazine. And so I could buy it. I was like 15 years old or something like that. And I could buy it and bring it home and go, wow, look at this, right? And I remember, savoring every page, and looking at the bikes and dreaming about having a bike like that someday. And I mean, that's what it really is. It's a dream book, It's like
Yeah.
you aspire to the kind of bikes that are in the magazine.
Yeah.
Never thinking I'd ever have anything to do with the magazine, you know?
Life's a trip, man. You never know where you're going. You know what I mean?
It is, it's
But you're
amazing.
right about with the bikes, over the years, every time any of us built anything custom, we always compared it to a bike in Easy Riders. We said, yeah, man, that's like Easy Riders quality.
Right,
You know,
right.
whatever.
Or
That
a
was like the
David or a
creme of the
David
creme,
Mann, David Mann painting you. I want a bike like that. So, yeah,
Yeah.
no, I absolutely get it. And,
Right on.
you
Well, look,
know,
I want to get into everything that you've got. You got some great stories, man. I know that,
yeah.
about Easy Riders, the back in the day all the way to now. But I want to get into you and where you got associated with two wheels. What age were you and where were you at?
I was in Miami, Florida, and, I had a, first bike I ever had was a little one-lunger Honda 65, a little tiny thing, but it had a tank on it. So it wasn't like one of those little step-through Honda 50s,
Oh, right.
So it looked like a motorcycle. And, this is about when Then Came Bronson was on television,
Yeah.
and I would watch every episode of that, and it was about the same time, it was like the next year is when Easy Rider came out in '69, right? So, I don't know how I talked my parents into taking me because it was rated R, and I remember being in this big movie theater watching Easy Rider, and they're going through the desert on these choppers, and I was just in heaven, right? Just amazed at this thing. And then, of course, they start playing the Pusher Man, and which there is some cursing. And I'm looking, oh, my mom's sitting right next to me, and he's yelling, "Ah, ah, ah," and it's like, oh, this is not good. And there's nudity and there's a lot of smoking pot and stuff. And I'm going, oh my God. But my parents were fairly oblivious to the whole thing. And
You enjoyed it?
I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't say that, but my dad was too cheap to leave. He would never, if he paid for a movie, he was going to watch the whole damn movie. So I remember right after that, I was the kid that sewed an American flag on the back of his jacket and went to school and instantly got in trouble. I was in the principal's office. Or, what are you doing putting that flag on the back of your jacket? What are you trying to say? Is this a political thing? Wow, man. No, man. I just want to be free to ride my machines, man, and not be hassled by the man. You know.
Yeah.
And so I started riding as soon as you could get a motorcycle license in Florida when you're 15 years old. And it had to be a small bike. It couldn't be over a certain number of, CCs.
Yeah.
But I went out and cut everybody's lawn in the neighborhood until I had enough money to buy that little bike. And then as soon as possible, they kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And my first Harley was a Harley Sprint. Remember those?
Oh yeah.
It was an Aramachi from Italy, but it
Yeah.
said Harley Davidson on the tank, and it was like, yeah, it's got Harley on the tank, you know. So I thought it was cool, you know. Now you look at them, it's like, look at this thing. Actually, I think Harley should do something like that today, because if you're a high school kid, you can't afford to have
Yeah.
a Harley, but
Yeah.
you
True.
sure as hell you could imagine this. They take that Buell motor that's just sitting around, they're not doing anything with the one lunger,
Yeah.
and you put that in a little bobber frame and have a
Yeah.
badass little bike. Wouldn't that, and any high school kid could afford to get one. I mean, that would be a good thing
That is
because
a good idea.
when they get you when you're young, it's like you're pretty much in. You're good for life, you know? It's like and that is needed now.
I'll
That
tell
kind
you,
of
when
thing
you
is
talk about
needed.
getting you for life with that movie, it did the same thing to me. You know, I was up in a farming town, Madera, north of Fresno in California, and I
Mhm.
was outside over the fence, watching it over the fence at the drive-in, and uh, and I was hooked on it just from the visual of it. It was
Oh,
like
yeah.
it was the most happening thing there was, you know.
Right.
But it took me
Yeah.
till I was probably about 14 or 15 then, and it took me till I was 19 to get a Harley. You know, money's money, you know. Not like
Right.
today's money though.
No, nothing like today's money, but still, I mean, I remember the first time I ever saw a Harley. For some reason, my parents had to go pick somebody up at the airport. And I'm down there, I'm a little kid. I couldn't have been more than 6 years old. And this guy is kick-starting this big black panhead. And he kicks it, and that thing roared to life. And I mean, it made my teeth rattle, right? And I just thought, that's it. That's me. That's what I want. And I swear, there's this thing that is hardwired in all of us. You're either the kid that is sitting in the classroom hearing a Harley go by and you stop doing your homework and you're like looking out the window. You're either that guy or you're everybody else. And it's like I was that guy going, "Oh, man." So it's always been there in a weird kind of way, you know? And then I never ever would have guessed that I would eventually be sitting in a movie theater right next to Peter Fonda in real life for the what was it, the 35th anniversary of the movie or something in New Orleans, and we're doing every line from the movie back and forth. I mean, it's like, how did that happen? You know, it's like, so I've been very blessed to live my dreams, I guess you'd say, you know.
Right on, man. So
Yeah,
as you
yeah.
grew up and got a little bit older, how did you end up with Easy Riders?
I was doing
Well,
this
wait a
is a
minute. Before you go there, I know you know the history of Easy Riders all the way back to inception. Can you kind
yeah,
of touch on that a little bit before we
yeah,
go, and then come in where you joined in?
sure. The basic beginning of Easy Riders magazine is that these three friends decided to move out of Minnesota where it was freezing cold and god awful because they wanted to go to California where it's always sunny and there's hot rods and bikinis and choppers, and that's what they wanted. So it was Mill Blair, Joe Teresi, and Lou Kimsey, and the three of them moved to California with the idea that they were going to start some sort of motorcycle related business. They started Jammer Cycle Products. And so Mill was kind of in charge of operations at Jammer. And they started building parts so that anybody could take a stock motorcycle and turn it into a chopper. So they had long front ends, they had hardtail kits that you could weld onto a regular swing arm frame. They had all these parts so you could take a stock bike and turn it into a chopper. And that was their fame. So what happened serendipitously, I guess you would say, is they did this thing where they came out with a brochure first, and it turned into a catalog, and it was called the Jammer Handbook. And it was just like a catalog of chopper parts. But what they did is they put a sexy girl on the cover with, like a Springer front end or something, right? And so they would have all the parts in this thing, but then there would be like some tech tips and stuff, like how to do this and how to do that, right? And eventually that evolved into Easy Riders magazine. So Lou Kimsey was an editor. He had a background in doing all kind of crazy magazines, really kind of psychedelic pot magazine stuff like that. And so he was going to be the guy who's kind of the brains behind what the magazine would look like. And Joe was a tech head. He had been drag racing bikes, his whole life and that kind of thing. And so, in fact, he still has this crazy drag bike with a V8 motor in it. That there are pictures of him, hanging on to this thing and going like a bat out of hell, and it's amazing. So the way the magazine came about is there wasn't a magazine that was dedicated to the people who ride choppers. All the motorcycle magazines of the day were more into nuts and bolts. So it's like you remember like Cycle World or
Yeah.
Motorcyclists or Cycle is they would say, okay, we're going to have a shootout between this model bike and this model bike,
Yeah.
which is faster. We're going to put them head to head, but it was all kind of nuts and bolts. But what they wanted to do was the exact opposite. They wanted to have a lifestyle magazine that's all about why people ride. And yeah, the ride itself and all that, a little bit of tech, but not really. It was all about the creative side of the biker culture. And there had not been anything like what they were trying to do. Ed Roth had colors for a while. And there were different magazines that were starting to go in that direction. But Easy Riders, the first issue came out in June of 1971. And it was like it just took off. They weren't expecting it to take off, I don't think. They weren't even thinking about stuff like advertising. They didn't realize at first that people would pay to put an ad in a magazine. They were just so into the culture themselves that they just wanted to do it as, they already had a business that was doing fine, and they could put, ads for Jammer in Easy Riders. So it was a win-win for everybody, and it just evolved from there. At first it was not a monthly magazine, it was probably quarterly, and then it eventually went to 6 times and then to 12 times, and the number of pages kept adding. And then what they discovered is they were getting so many photos from readers because, they'd want to share pictures of their bike or some crazy thing they did, showing class in some way or other. And they started In the Wind magazine, because In the Wind was at the time just a couple pages in Easy Riders where people send in a picture and there's their picture, doing something crazy. And so then we had a quarterly called In the Wind
I
that
remember.
was done by Kim
Yeah.
Peterson for forever and ever. And that was the only two magazines that the company had for a really long time. And by the way, the company behind Easy Riders has always been Paisano Publications,
Yeah.
and that's for those three guys, the three paisans that
Yeah.
started the whole thing, right? And so they were always in Southern California. They finally bought a building in Agoura Hills, and that's when things started to really grow because they were making plenty of dough off of Easy Riders and selling t-shirts and hats and all kinds of swag and stuff like that. But then it really started growing. And by the time I joined them in 1991, they wanted to have more magazines. They wanted to grow this whole thing. And the one thing I realized is that all these different magazines that they ended up creating, they all had to do with is they were edgy lifestyles that went mainstream. So like they have Tattoo Magazine. So when I was a kid, the only people with tattoos were bikers, sailors, and convicts. That was
Yeah,
about it. But
yeah,
now everybody has a tattoo, or everybody knows somebody that has a tattoo. Every kid's got a tattoo, and it's like it became mainstream. So they're edgy, rebellious lifestyles that went big. So bikers, hot rod cars, we even did a custom truck magazine called Tailgate, so it just evolved into this big thing. And pretty soon there were Easy Rider stores all over the country. You could get your bike fixed there, you could buy a t-shirt, some even had cafes in them. And so they had this licensed Easy Rider store thing, and they had 13 different magazine titles. And we had a TV show on Speed Channel. I mean, it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And for me, I mean, the way I got to Easy Riders was I was doing a magazine for Outlaw Biker at the time, years ago. They wanted to do a West Coast version of Outlaw Biker. And so I talked to Casey Exton, and the way that happened was weird. Originally, I was the producer of a radio show called American Top 40, which was at the time the biggest radio show on earth. It was all over the world. You could listen to American Top 40. So um, we did a story about Joan Jett, and I had written this thing about we didn't have anything else to say about Joan Jett. We had come up with every angle we could, but she had this top 10 hit, like I Love Rock and Roll or something, that was on the top 10 for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I noticed she was on the cover of Outlaw Biker magazine. She was doing some benefit for Chuck Zito or something. And I said, okay, that's it. We've got in the countdown this next artist. She's been in TV shows, she's been in movies, she's got a top 10 hit, and now she's on the cover of a magazine, but it's not Vogue. Find out more right after this. And you go to commercial, come back, find out she's on the cover of Outlaw Biker magazine. So the publisher of Outlaw Biker magazine called me and said, "Did you write that?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "You even knew the year of the knucklehead on the cover?" I go, "Yeah." "Do you ride?" "Uh-huh." "Would you like to do a magazine for us on the West Coast?" "Sure." you know. So I was doing stuff for them, and I got this crazy idea to share that with Keith Ball, who was the editor of Easy Riders magazine. So I called him up. I told him, "Look, I just finished this magazine. I want you to see it. I'm going to bring it out and show it to you." And so he invited me over, and that was like the kid in the candy store, right? You go to the Easy Riders offices in Agoura Hills, California. You go up to see the editorial department, and there are magazine covers all over the walls, beautifully framed. And there are Dave Mann, real Dave Mann paintings, actual original Dave Mann paintings on the walls everywhere. And you turn right to go into editorial, and there is a chopper sitting right there in front of the receptionist's desk. It's like, wow. And then you go into Keith's office, and he's got stuff like he doesn't have a conference table. He's got a jail cell door with glass on top of it. That's the conference table. And the seats are all motorcycle seats. I was like, oh my God, this is like crazy. His desk is a panhead motor with a big oval piece of glass on top of it. And it's like, okay, I'm good. If nothing else happens to me in my life, I'm good. And so I showed him the magazine, and he goes, "So do you want a job?" I said, "Well, I'm under contract, blah, blah, blah at the moment with, but I'd be very interested, when my contract's up." And he tells me that they want to branch out and do different magazines and they need help. So the first thing, I eventually did take that job, and I went to find out what they wanted, and it was like they were doing 3 more tattoo related magazines, and they were doing at the time, this was in the early 90s. So um, Keith was a hamster,
Mhm.
and he had all these friends that were hamsters, and all the bikes were really expensive, real high-end Arlen Ness stuff, you know. And so they wanted to do a magazine and see if it would work that was like a high-end bike magazine. And so they came out with VQ, you know, GQ, VQ.
Yeah.
And so that was a quarterly magazine aimed at the rich urban biker.
Mhm.
So they wanted to do that. They also wanted to do completely the opposite thing, which is they wanted to do just antiques. They wanted a quarterly that was classic, gorgeous antique motorcycles. And that was called Early Riders. And
Mhm.
so it's like they had me working on both of those and contributing to Easy Riders. And plus, I started Tattoo Flash, which was all flash art. And so they had me working on a bunch of different magazines and the videos. We had Easy Riders videos. So I was in heaven. You know, this is like the ultimate job. I get to ride my bike to the office. And here's the coolest thing about working at Easy Riders. Every Friday at noon, you have to go get on your motorcycle and go ride. Because if you can't ride, you can't write about it.
Right on,
And
man.
that was the
Keeping it
whole
real.
it's the only place in the world you could work and go, hey man, my bike needs a part. And they go get it, go handle it. You know, it's like, really? Yeah, go. Oh man, it was the best. And the crazy crew of people. You know, Clean Dean Schaller did Biker. Uh, Kim Peterson did In the Wind. Kai Reiki was the German editor who would translate everything into German. But the group together, it was like, wow, it was the best TV sitcom you can imagine that never actually became a TV sitcom.
It's a good idea you got right there. People
Yeah.
would watch that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I remember we were shooting a cover for like a big anniversary issue, like maybe it was the 40th anniversary or something like that. And the idea was there were 3 girls, a blonde, a redhead, and a brunette, and they have a cake that says happy, you know, anniversary Easy Riders. And while they are being shot for this cover, the whole idea is they kind of get cake everywhere. And without going into great detail, you get the idea that there was some nudity involved and a lot of cake. And I remember telling one of the girls, could you please get more cake on this part of your body? And I just thought, where else can you do this for a living?
Yeah, that's a
This
tough one.
is you
Yeah.
have motorcycles. I mean, it's like amazing. So I was in heaven, and that's how I got to be involved in Easy Riders, and it continued to grow and flourish. And you know, that whole era with Discovery Channel, that was amazing because um, we had an editor who, a videotape editor, who went on to work for, um, oh, what was the guy? Tom Beers.
Mhm.
His production company did these shows that were on Discovery Channel and History Channel. And the way it worked is they had a show that wasn't doing very well, but it was basically weird jobs that people have. And it was called On the Inside.
Huh.
So they had done like a rodeo clown. They did an episode of an underwater welder, you know, but I get a call from this guy who used to work for us. His name was Hugh King. And he said, we want to do something with a young custom bike builder. It's got to be full of attitude. It's got to be really out there. And we want to do an hour show on this guy. And I said, come with me. I took him down to West Coast Choppers. I said, see the cool spider web gates, see the
Yeah.
the pit bulls over here, see the shark tank in the place. And of course, Jesse is just completely out there and doing all this great fabrication stuff. And they did this show called Motorcycle Mania. And it was the number one rated show ever on cable TV, ever. And so that went into Monster Garage. And then they did the Great Biker Build Off, which pitted two builders against each other. And so they didn't know about motorcycles though. So they would call me and say, "Who's next?" And I'd say, "Okay, do you want a young guy, an older guy? You want a guy from the north, guy from the south?" Totally different styles of motorcycles. So you'd have Dave Perowitz go up against Billy Lane. And so you would do these shows where they both build a bike, they have to ride it somewhere, and then there's some sort of competition where one guy wins. And then you go to the next episode type thing. And so they would call me up and go, "Who's next?" And the beauty of that was all these bikes that were on TV ended up on the cover of Easyriders. So it's like cross promoting the show and all this kind of stuff. It worked out great. So we rode that whole TV thing for as long as it lasted, and eventually what happened is there was a woman in charge of television at Discovery named Jane Root, who wanted Discovery Channel to be more like its original concept and have more like shows like Planet Earth. She called shows like the Tuttles show American Chopper and the Great Biker Build Off and Monster Garage. She called those testosterone TV, and she wanted none of it, even though the ratings were through the roof. So, over a period of a couple years, all those shows disappeared. And it was sad for all of us in the motorcycle industry because even though they were ridiculous shows and weren't really about what the culture is all about, the thing is, it helped the industry. Not only did it help the motorcycle industry, but it helped everybody around the motorcycle industry. So it was good for the magazine. It was good for even like little kids would watch Monster Garage or one of these shows, and we would put our commercials for Easy Riders bike shows while you're watching, Discovery Channel, and little kids would say to their parents, "I want to go see the custom bike, I want to go to the show." So for the first time ever, we had families coming to Easy Riders bike shows to see custom bikes. And that led to all the bike builders being on the tour circuit with us.
Now, you also had the Easy Rider Rodeo too, right?
Yeah, and we still do. We still do those today.
That
And
thing's badass.
that that's a great TV show that's never been done. Following these people around the country, they put their life on hold and they go race motorcycles in really unusual ways, like there's the slow race. There's all kinds of, anything you would do in a standard rodeo, only you have iron horses instead of real horses.
Yeah.
But it's fun. It's just totally fun, and that would make for a great show.
That would.
Yeah.
So what's going on with Easy Rider right now?
So let's see. Over the years, Joe Tressi has sold the company a couple of different times. The first time he sold it for an enormous amount of money to a couple of guys who were restaurateurs. And they wanted to do a themed restaurant, sort of like Hooters, only it would be Easy Riders, and you would be able to ride your bike in there and have a burger and a beer and that kind of idea. But these were not guys who know anything about motorcycles. They just had the money to buy the company, and they had it for a couple of years. And Joe eventually bought it back for pennies on the dollar, and did very well with that. So he ended up with everything back again. And we continued through all this. We continued to do the magazine every month and all the other 12 titles, um, besides Easyriders. And then um, about 3 years ago, I want to say, there was a guy that came along from Canada and he wanted to buy the company, but he wasn't really interested in the magazine. He wanted to do Easyriders Blue Jeans.
Huh.
Well, that didn't work out so well. So he went through a lot of money, and once again, it ended up back in Joe's hands. And this is now maybe 2 years ago. I get a phone call from Joe, and he says, "You want to do the magazine again?" And I said, "Hell yeah!" So we started up with a publisher out of New York. We've been doing at first we started calling it Classic Easy Riders because we wanted to get the idea across that it's like Easy Riders in the old days. It's not, you know, it's like adhering to its original roots, I guess you'd say.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
so now after I think we've done about 17, 18 issues since we started up again. And now it's just Easy Riders. It's just Easy Riders the way it's always been. It's Easy Riders. The only thing is there's no nudity anymore because you can't sell a magazine in America anymore that has nudity in it. It's damn near impossible.
Huh.
Walmart won't accept it. You can't buy it anywhere, so you can't really do it. If
Huh.
you want to reach enough people to keep the thing going, it can't have nudity. So we have Easy Riders the way it originally was envisioned. There's just nothing in there that you can't show your mom. So that's okay. I mean, most of us used to think, gosh, that girl's getting in the way of the bike, you know?
What you guys had like a whole bunch of different, you had the Dave Mann stuff, you had the fictional biker stories about runs and stuff, which
Yep.
was really good, well written every time. And you even had these little real simple wiring tech diagrams, like three wire system on a Harley.
Right.
Back when everybody's riding choppers with no wires, and
Yeah. Yeah. Tech
really
you can
cool
really
stuff, man.
use,
We used all that.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorites was if you're out on the road and you've got a head gasket leak, how you can use the cover of Easy Riders magazine as a temporary gasket.
That's a good one.
That's
I
like,
don't remember that, but
where
that's a good one. Yeah,
where else are you gonna get that, right?
nowhere. Right on,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. So it was just purely fun, you
Well, I'll tell
know.
you what, man, you guys have blazed the trail for everybody else out there, man. Nobody
Oh,
else can say they were the number one that started it all. And when you started Easy Riders, like you were saying earlier, they had all those other ones for stock motorcycles, like,
yeah.
Cycle World, that
Yep.
kind of a thing. And for all the scooter tramps of the day and on, there wasn't anything. And when this came out, it was like everybody was all over it, man. And it really was the shit for a long time there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it was nasty and crazy and funny. It's like, there isn't anything in there that you didn't, when you read it, is like clearly obvious that this was put together by actual bikers.
Yeah,
you know
no doubt. No doubt, man.
right, right. And that's kind of where we are now. I have a couple of friends that got involved with me, and once again we purchased the magazine from Joe Teresi, and now it's just actual real bikers running the show once again, and that
Nice.
feels that feels really good.
Right on, man. Well, it's been a great interview, man. You got anything else to add before we close out?
Oh, I didn't even get into the stories about Fonda, but I
Oh,
will tell
well,
you this.
we got to do that.
I have to tell you about that because when I first started working there, I said, "Why don't you do anything with Peter Fonda? I mean, we're easy riders, easy rider, easy riders." They go, "Oh, he doesn't like us." What do you mean he doesn't like? He thinks we took the name, from the. I go, "Well, you did. You kind of did." And
Yeah.
he said, "Well, he's not real thrilled with us." And I said, let me talk to him. So there was a bike event in Seattle, Washington, and I lived in Seattle at the time. So I went down there and I found Peter Fonda's trailer that he was at. I just knocked on the door, and he opened the door and I explained who I was and he had me come in. I sat down and I said, look, I go, here's what we're doing. Here's what we're about, and so much time had passed, since, you know, the movie had come out. And I told him I wanted to do a story about what the movie was actually about. And so he says, okay. And we actually got to be really good friends. And he was the coolest freaking guy I've ever met. It was like we used to call it, it was like you're on the Fonda show, because when you're in his presence, it was like, okay, we're all gonna go we're all gonna go buy new BMWs. And it's like, okay, it was like being in the circus. It was crazy. Um, I remember before Indian came back as Indian, there was a company called the California Motorcycle Company out of Gilroy, I think they
Yeah,
were in
remember
California,
that.
and they had a Captain America bike that they were doing a limited edition of,
Right.
and so we were there promoting that, and we were in some hotel lobby, and there's Peter Fonda, and there are the people that own Ray Sotelo and the people that owned CMC, and Peter decides that we're going to all sing Deo at the top of our lungs in the lobby. So there I am with Peter Fonda singing Deo, which is all by itself terrific. And then this guy comes up who is extremely drunk. And I remember he walked up he swaggered up to Peter and he said, "You're the reason I ride, man. You're the reason I ride. You movie Easy Rider. You're the reason I ride, man." And the guy went on like that for a good 15 minutes. And Peter listened to him and he, spoke nicely to him. And you could see his friends trying to pull him away from, and Peter goes, "No, it's fine. It's cool." So after a good 20 minutes of, hearing, "You're the reason I ride, man," they finally did get the guy to go off to bed or whatever. And I said to Peter, I said, "That was really kind of you to give that guy so much of your time." And he goes, as only he could, he said, "Dig, man, that guy's been waiting 30 years to tell me that. Of course I'm going to give him my time."
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah.
they say you can't meet your heroes because they'll let you down. Not the case with this guy.
No, no, no.
He was every bit as cool as you think that he would be, and
There
so
was
yeah.
back 2010 to 12, Jesse did some rigid frame bikes with a 240 on the back. And I made a deal with him, me and Billy from Spike Engineering, and we got 10 frames and we got the sheet metal fenders and everything. We built Illusions under my manufacturing with EPA and carb certs and everything.
Mm-hmm.
My motors in there and all that, but it was Jesse's sheet metal and frame. And we did one of them with the Peter Fonda theme paint job. And I've
Yep.
got a picture somewhere of him sitting on that bike. Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember. It went to some show or whatever. And I got a picture of him on the bike, but that was a cool bike.
Yeah.
Totally different, of course, than the original.
And the original. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, it's like just there have been so many stories like that over the years where you pinch yourself and say, is this actually happening? You're surrounded by people that are icons in the industry. When I first Keith Ball introduced me to like Donnie Smith, and I was like, not worthy. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy.
Yeah. He did a
Good.
bunch of early movies like that and stuff too. Yeah. He was a
Yeah, I
good
mean,
dude.
it's just neat that this has come to a point now where guys like you and me, we're the old guys now.
I know. Used to be called, I was the young guy, used to be called Junior. What happened? You know?
That's right.
And
That's right.
all
It's
the
been,
stuff
it's
we
been a
did
fun
way
ride,
back,
though. Been
all
a fun
those
ride.
Oh man, all the old choppers and everything that we did, $500 bikes, $1,000 bikes and everything back then,
Right.
it all went away and now it's coming back.
Yeah.
It's just done
Oh
a
yeah,
whole circle, man.
100%. That's why I think we're in a good place for Easy Riders to do really well again, because young guys don't have a lot of money, but they got all the heart and soul and passion that you can imagine for building a chopper, and
Yep.
those are the stories we want to tell,
Yep.
that's what it's
You know
about.
what else? Over in Denmark and some of those countries over there, they really embraced the chopper. They never let it go.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah,
No, it
and
never went out of style.
yeah, and the government over there subsidizes private shops for individuals. I don't know if they quit doing it, but they were up till recently. And they all build bikes. They share space,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
have rides.
Co-ops.
Yeah, yeah, and they have rides around all that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like where they have to ride a bike that you built.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
it's the
That's
old stuff we were
pretty
riding,
cool.
man. You know.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, so we're in incredible times, and as long as there is, a heart beating in in any of us, there will be choppers and there will
That's
be
right.
custom bikes and there'll be people out there riding and having a good time.
That's right, man. Well, again, man, I want to thank you guys, the Easy Rider. I want to thank you for everything you've done, and that's where it all started, man.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
where it started for me, for you,
yeah,
for a multitude of old scooter tramps and the new ones out there.
it's true. It's true. Yeah, so folks, subscribe today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you're not getting Easy Rider, you better start getting it now, man.
Yeah, yeah,
It's back, man. It's like it was.
classiceasyriders.com. That's
All right,
right.
Joe. I mean, Dave. I'm thinking
I'm
of
Dave.
Joe. It was great having you here, man.
Thanks, Rusty. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, man. I look
You
forward
bet.
to seeing you soon.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. See you later.
Bye, folks.